Hello, America. Welcome to your Leo Nation, where we believe in and support the rule of law. I am the chief, happily the retired chief. Mark Garrett joining us today again is Anthony Jackson. Anthony, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, it's my pleasure because, you're one more person I can make fun of. So, and with that face, people can see why.
Making fun of Christopher Wray today.
Well, you know what? That's lower hanging fruit than you are, quite frankly. So I tell you what, I wish we could actually make fun of some of these people, but it's such a serious discussion. And I'll do my best to get some jabs in here and there, but the comedy kind of writes itself, quite frankly, with what's going on. Again, the things we're going to talk about today, obviously, the level of seriousness couldn't be higher. We're talking about, just recently the assassination attempt of President Trump. And it unless he had been killed, it doesn't get more serious than that. But, Anthony, what should be serious, what should be serious should be the investigation into this, the hearings into it. And there are some people that are very serious. We're talking about representatives, House of Representatives, but there are some people who I won't say are making jackasses out of themselves. They continue to make jackasses out of themselves because every time they open their mouth, I don't care what the topic is, they sound like jackasses. They sound like complete political hacks and have no interest in simply looking at the facts, calling balls and strikes. They use every opportunity to make their political statement, no matter what the topic is, no matter what the seriousness of the situation is. And I've got some prime examples of that right now. I was on with Bill Bodner on his show, just recently, Truth Nation, with the hearings last week of Kimberly Cheatle, who I predicted, you guys were there, I predicted she wouldn't last 30 days. I was the lone. Yeah.
I did say after the hearing, though.
You said one day.
And then I changed it.
Yeah. Well, sorry, dude. Sorry. Okay. Sorry. By the way, I did say she wouldn't last 30 days. I was off by about 2 weeks, but I didn't think she's going to last. Well, they're not going to fire her because they don't want the administration to look bad and blah, blah, blah. But I'll tell you right now, on day 2, I said, you know what? There's just too much pressure on this woman.
Yeah.
And there's too much evidence of a complete disaster that she's going to be a liability in that administration. And I knew that she was going. And by the way, a lot of Democrats obviously felt the same way, and they pressured her out. Not quite as soon as I thought that she would be gone, but she left.
I was surprised how they all turned on her, though. Most of them, with a few exceptions, like you said, that were making jackasses out of themselves. But I was surprised when you guys did the live reaction to the hearing and just seeing kind of both sides of the aisle going, hey, you messed up big time and you're not even giving us answers. And I thought that was a really good thing. Just my 2 cents in there. And I hope people, check that out and seeing how both aisles can kind of work together and actually, it is theater, but it did result in her resigning, which is good. But I wish she was fired, but who's in charge of that. So
yes.
That wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, listen, someone fired him, as a matter of fact, as far as I'm concerned. He didn't, I guess you are talking about El Presidente, I presume.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, but, and people give the Democrats, credit. Hey, they stepped up. They did the right thing. Some of them did, by the way. I mean, like Ro Khanna, who I don't agree with on anything political. I thought he was one of the straightest shooters in those hearings with the Secret Service director of anybody. He played it right down the line. He went right to the facts of the matter. He called it. I mean, there was no frosting on it whatsoever. He just said, "You got to go. You have to go." And I think, one of the things, Anthony, about that, about, both sides of the aisles working together, or the aisle working together on that, with the former director, is that I think almost all of them realize that if this can happen to Donald Trump, it can happen to anybody.
Yeah.
If Secret Service performs so poorly this day with President Trump, it could happen, and God forbid, it could happen to President Biden. It could happen to Vice President Harris. It could happen to any cabinet member. It could happen to a family member. I think at that point, I mean, the threshold has been met. So, okay, you know what? All bets are off. We got to get politics out of this. Again, for the most part, and we're going to talk about some of those outliers, but for the most part, he said, this is a bridge too far. Because if the Secret Service is not doing their job as prescribed, then any of us or our political allies, our representatives, could be in severe danger. So that's my take on it. But it's too bad it has to come to that for people to come together. So now, for people who, as an example of people who will never come together on anything commonsensical, we're going to play. Actually, we got just a handful of clips today from these hearings. I think 3 of them are with Christopher Wray, and one is with Kimberly Cheatle, Secret Service. But a couple of these are examples of people, or a few of them, I'd say, are examples of people who, I'm sorry, they're elected officials, but beyond that, they are complete political hacks. In other words, their party that's it. That is the end game, period. They can do no wrong, their party. Everything is about the platform. Everything is about political strategy. It doesn't matter what the facts are. It doesn't matter what the situation is. They can't call it as probably they really see it. And they take any opportunity to manipulate people, to make, to engage in political grandstanding. Every opportunity, even the situation with the assassination attempt. So with that said, let me just jump right into this, Anthony. Can you pull up this first clip? And I'll set it up for you guys. The first clip is with Representative Adam Schiff. Adam Schiffless. This guy, look, before I play this, it's 60 seconds long. But I want everybody to think about, this is the guy who went on every cable news network during the Trump administration and swore that he had evidence of Russian collusion by Donald Trump. Yeah, I've seen it. He said, you can go back and see. We're not going to play that clip. He's seen the evidence. He knows the evidence is there factually. There's no doubt about it. He's going to bring it forward to the public when the timing is right, so forth and so on. He told America that he had evidence that Donald Trump, as president, and probably before, was engaging in Russian collusion. And to this day, he's never brought an iota of evidence forward. He also, of course, was a big supporter, promoter of the idea, the dossier that Trump had engaged in all kinds of, well, let's put it this way, Hunter Biden behavior. How's that? With Russians. Talking about,
good example.
Yeah, that's what we'll call it. That Donald Trump engaged in Hunter Biden-like behavior as a private citizen and did all the kinds of things that those images may conjure up in your mind. He was all part of that. And of course, we all know that turned out to literally be make-believe. It was made up. It was all created in an effort to stop Trump from winning the 2016 election. And he was certainly politically actively,
right. Oh, no.
He was part of that, but he was a big promoter of that slander, that scheme as well. So this is the guy that we're talking about right now. By the way, he's my former representative when I was in the state of California, and reason 178. I'm glad to be out of California. Unfortunately, he's still in Congress, and now he's running for Senate in California, U.S. Senate. So props to Steve Garvey. We hope that Steve Garvey in California can knock this guy out of politics once and for all. but we'll see what happens. It is California. I'm not holding my breath, but we'll see. So with that said, so this is Adam Schiff, and he is going to question Director Christopher Wray regarding the FBI's investigation into the assassination attempt. So now, by the way, that's what you think it would be, a questioning, interviewing the FBI director. But let's see how Adam Schiff uses this opportunity, and it is an opportunity given the horrific circumstances, but now there's an opportunity to question the FBI director about their investigation into this. Let's see what Adam Schiff does with his time. Go ahead, Anthony, hit that first clip.
California's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, thank you for appearing. Thank you for the extraordinary job that you're doing. Please convey our thanks to the men and women at the Bureau for their incredible work. I've worked with them since I was an assistant U.S. attorney more than 30 years ago. Let me start with a threshold question I'm curious about. When I applied to be an assistant U.S. attorney, I had to go through a background check. Do candidates for the FBI have to go through background checks?
Yes.
Would someone with dozens of felony convictions survive a background check for the Bureau?
No.
So they would never be hired by the Bureau?
No.
Well, clearly the Bureau has, you don't have to comment on this, I know you won't, but clearly the Bureau has higher standards for their hiring than one of America's great political parties. Let me turn to the events of the tragic shooting.
Stop it.
Wow.
This is a despicable human being. He even says, I know you probably won't, or I know you won't comment, you can't comment on this. Right there, he admits up front, hey, I'm just going to go ahead and use this time to make take a political swipe at the Republican nominee for president. That's all I'm going to do here with my first 60 seconds of this time. He said something in there, Anthony. He said, let me start with this threshold question. Now, I know what the word threshold means. It means a plateau. It means a level. It means a delineation, a point by which something triggers or something has to be done. I have no idea what he meant by threshold question. What in the hell do these ridiculous charges, by the way, in New York, the state of New York, have to do with Donald Trump being shot? I have no idea. I mean, maybe you can add some light to this, Anthony. But I'm at a loss.
No, yeah, I definitely, I'm in the same boat as you. I think, this is part of the, I that was the first time of me watching that clip. I didn't get a chance to see the hearing of Christopher Wray, and the questions that they got to ask him and stuff. So I'm actually excited to watch all this stuff and hear it for the first time. And I was taken back by him asking that question, because I was like, where is he going with this? Is there like a security breach or something, or maybe they laxed on it in the FBI? But then he comes from left field and he just takes another jab at Trump of just pure hatred. It's like he's trying to get the emotions riled up in people, even after he gets shot in the head. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I know that there's people out there, and I know of some people who wish that the bullet was a quarter of an inch over, which is really sad. Mm-hmm. It's like, that could be me, you, anybody that we love and know, and it's just they're getting shot because of their belief, their political affiliation, etc., and they don't see it on the flip side. They're blinded by hatred. And this guy, he is smart enough to be a representative and be where he's at, so he knows exactly what he's doing. He's trying to pull the strings on people's emotions, and I mean, again, you have them, the same very people, saying that Trump is responsible for J6, right? Mm-hmm. Inciting it, yet they don't hold themselves accountable for inciting hatred with all the rhetoric that they're saying. It's just literally um, they're doing the exact same thing that they're claiming that Trump was doing, and it's pure gaslighting, and it seems like there's no end on the spectrum. They do it, for even tiny things like Biden saying, "I'm not going to resign.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also going to be uh, going up for re-election. 1,000%," he said.
It'll
And
take an
then
act of God for me to leave.
yeah, exactly. And then 3 days later, he tweets out, or posts, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
So there really is no line that they draw, especially people like him. And there's a few others, like you said, that these people are just, I don't know if they're getting their pockets lined up or if their morality is that janky. I don't know. But just my take on it is that it's spreading pure hatred, and this is exactly what gets people shot in the head. And
Well,
it's not he's not going to be held accountable, which is really sad unless people
mhm.
like us stick up for the right causes and we go out there and vote. And like, Steve Garvey is running against him. We need to really show that we're sick and tired of the hatred. It doesn't matter if you hate Trump, or I shouldn't say that, because the people who hate Trump will
Yeah,
agree with him.
yeah, exactly.
But if you dislike him, it's like I mean, the guy got shot in the head and 2 bullets went past his head. you
Yeah.
know my point being is that we all need to come together and we need to call out crap like this that goes on, because even just these little subtle jabs, they're it's piling on again, which is just not it's not acceptable.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, here we go again. And of course, you touched on the rhetoric, and ironically, maybe because the clip's coming, but we are gonna go just right to that subject about the statements and how each side relates to them, talks about them, where the hatred's coming from. And you said something a minute ago too about all coming together. Look, this and again, I pointed it out. I said there are a lot of Democrats that really just focused on the breakdown of the Secret Service in this case, and the likely breakdown, in other places. They went in as representatives and did their job in this case, and just tried to get the bottom of this. At first with Kimberly Cheatle, and later on with Christopher Wray. But as Adam Schiff exemplified, there are so many. And by the way, there were some grandstanders on the right as well. I'm going to be totally transparent and honest about this. There were some there, and they were making their points as well. But when you start off with saying or asking the director of the FBI, well, you don't hire people with felony convictions, do you? I mean, this is so far out of bounds. It's so far unrelated to anything of substance regarding the shooting, or regarding the Secret Service's ability to do their job, or regarding the FBI's role in investigating the shooting. It's just despicable. But this is his entire career. Again, been around Adam Schiff, politically for a long time, having lived in California. And I know what the guy is capable of. I know he's up to right now. And here we go again. You said it, Anthony. Here we go again for this next round, at least for the next few months. So speaking of this, about the rhetoric, we hear all the time, oh, we don't want hate speech and blah, 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 unless it's coming from one side. Then it's the mostly peaceful protest, and it's the First Amendment absolutely all the time, no matter what, blah, blah. But if it comes from the other side, it's immediately labeled hate speech. It's amazing. So this next clip is going to be one of the biggest guys in Washington, D.C., Jerry Nadler, another, I'm sorry, despicable human being. That's all I can say. When you look at how he went after Donald Trump. I mean, twice he's behind two impeachments of Donald Trump that have absolutely no merit whatsoever. Again, I'm just trying to look at this from the rule of law, which is so important. It's what your illumination is all about. We talk about the rule of law. And when you look at the impeachments, we won't get in those right now, but you talk about zero substance, but the Democrats wanted to use this administrative tool to politically injure the president of the United States, and they did it. And Jerry Nadler, along with the usual suspects, Adam Schiff, Nancy Pelosi, on and on and on and on and on, we're behind that. Again, it's an attempt to politically injure the sitting president of the United States. So here's Jerry Nadler again. Now, again, this is going to go to the rhetoric that you brought up, Anthony. And this is all also going to reflect on Christopher Wray and his, I think, inability to be consistently honest, forthcoming. It's very interesting. I found these two clips. I want you to play the first one. This is Jerry Nadler interacting with Christopher Wray on the congressional hearings recently. Go ahead and play clip 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I said in my opening statement, political violence is a scourge and entirely unacceptable, no matter the source or the target. Last October, a far-right conspiracy theorist broke into Nancy Pelosi's home and bludgeoned her husband.
Stop.
Prominent Republicans.
Stop it, Anthony. So first of all, Nadler says that far right, but if you listen correctly, we can rewind it. I want to make sure I'm right on this, but he said just a few seconds. I think he said far right conspiracy theorists. Play that again.
Mm-hmm. 1 second, it's kind of jumping.
There you go. That's fine.
Drones is.
Oh no, it's way back. We're way forward. You got to go back to the very, very beginning. Very, very beginning on this one, or 32. At 30, Anthony. Sorry.
Yeah,
just at 30.
It's not letting me scrub.
That's okay.
Yeah,
we'll get it back. Start from there. Start from there. Yep.
His home and bludgeoned her husband. Prominent Republicans mocked the attack and promoted conspiracy theories about it. Last August, an armed Utah man who threatened to kill President Biden was killed as FBI agents attempted to serve a warrant on him hours before President Biden landed in his state. Some on the right claimed that the man was simply a, quote, Second Amendment enthusiast. In recent weeks and months, those on the right have repeatedly called for, quote, civil war, with an Ohio state senator saying that if Republicans lose the election, quote, it's going to take a civil war to save the country, and it will be saved. The president of the Heritage Foundation likewise said that, quote, we are in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be, close quote. Director Wray, it's obviously important that we respect First Amendment protections, but there is clearly a point at which some violent rhetoric crosses over into threats of violence or leads to actual violence. Could you describe how the FBI looks at this relationship between rhetoric and action and what you are seeing around the country?
Stop it, Anthony.
So I appreciate the question.
Right there. Now, I want you to listen to this answer from Wray. So first of all, Jerry Nadler, and I have a lot of nicknames for him. I won't comment on it. I'll try to be a nice guy today. But Jerry Nadler, he made the claim that there was a far right-wing nut job that attacked Paul Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi's husband in San Francisco. Send the comments in, ladies and gentlemen. Send the email, send the messages, whatever it is. I'm not sure where he got that. I don't know if anybody remembers this guy being a right-wing nut, or I don't know. Anthony, maybe you can chime in on that, but we'll find out. But he talks about all the violent rhetoric coming from the right, all the incendiary stuff. He used these examples of civil war. Look, I said that this is the most divided time in American history since the Civil War. I believe that right now as I'm talking. I still believe it is. I think there might be a political civil war. In other words, that people are going to start using the Constitution in the ways it was designed to be used, amending the Constitution, states' rights, absolutely. I don't think there's anybody on the right in a political sense, representatives that are advocating or predicting a civil war. As a matter of fact, even Jerry Nadler, in his own bumbling, stumbling, waddling words, said that this Republican said there won't be a civil war unless, or he said bloodless civil war, unless the left won't allow it. In other words, unless the left starts violence. So those are his own words, Jerry Nadler. He said that. So I don't know of anybody who's seriously advocating a civil war, an armed civil war in the United States. Although there is plenty of violence taking place right now. Just a handful of days ago, we saw it again. We saw political violence in Washington, D.C. Statues being defaced, Hamas flags being put up in front of Union Station in Washington, D.C. I don't think there is anybody out there who votes for Donald Trump or a conservative or a Republican or probably an independent that was involved in that. That stuff's coming from the radical left, which, by the way, is kind of redundant now, in my humble opinion. So, but he asked Ray about this, set the question about political rhetoric and violent rhetoric. So, once you keep that in mind, I'm talking a lot, but that was a setup. So, Anthony, continue the clip if you can.
Okay.
And this is an issue that I've been talking about for some time. In our view, there is a right way and a wrong way under the First Amendment to express your views, no matter how passionate or even angry you are. And violence and threats of violence is not the right way. And we don't care what you're upset about or who you're upset with. When, from the FBI's perspective, when it turns to violence and threats of violence, that's when we have to draw the line. That's when we get engaged. And there is an alarming phenomenon that we've seen over the last several years of that kind of passion and heated rhetoric turning into actual violence and threats of violence. We've seen it against public officials of all sorts. We've seen it against law enforcement. The number of officers shot and killed in the line of duty in this country is frankly outrageous and alarming. And I know that because every time an officer is shot and killed anywhere in this country, since the day I started as FBI director, I personally call the chief or the sheriff to express my condolences.
Stop.
And to talk to them about.
So Christopher Wray, he admits there's this heightened political violent rhetoric. Did I hear that right, Anthony?
Yes.
And
he's saying
did he say there's no place for it? And by the way, you can go back and comment here if I let you get a word in edgewise, and I'm on a roll right now. But what I heard was that there was this mission that's out there, and he did at the beginning. He talked about threats of violence. It's unacceptable because, again, threats of violence that can be carried out, and people have the ways and means and specific target. That is certainly in California, I think every place, and I think Christopher Wray's right on this. That is a tangible and clear violation of law when you specifically threaten somebody with violence and you have the ways and means and intent to carry it out. But he went beyond that. And I wrote this down, I put in quote, he says, when passions and rhetoric, we see passion and rhetoric turning to violence, and it's unacceptable. So he didn't just talk about the specific threats that are out there. And by the way, I haven't heard anybody mention the threat against our Supreme Court justice who was almost assassinated. Someone brought a gun and a knife to his home. I haven't heard about these attacks, these threats on the right, so to speak. I think maybe it was Nadler or Schiff. Maybe mentioned Scalise from, 8 years ago, whatever it was. That's about it. But Christopher Wray mentioned the passion is unacceptable as well. The things that are just being said, even if they aren't specific threats towards an individual, but the things that he's seeing and reading, I'm putting words in his mouth now, I'm paraphrasing, but he talked about the passion and the rhetoric, how it's turning to violence. He sees it turning to violence. Now, did I hear that right, Anthony?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he was able to comment there when he was asked by Nadler. No problem. He gave his opinion. I think it was pretty clear. And I said there were a few parts of it, but some of it was quite political, where he was just talking about the political rhetoric and how it can turn to violence. So with that said, Anthony, I want you to go to clip 3 for me. Now, this is Representative Wesley Hunt. And Representative Hunt is also speaking to Ray. I believe this is later on in the hearings. And I want you to watch this. And this is about a 2-minute clip. And for those of you who are only listening and not watching, you really need to be seeing this. And I'll set it up because during the setup for his question and address to Director Wray, Representative Hunt has an aide set up a visual aid behind him. That visual aid, it's a picture of Donald Trump made to look somewhat like Adolf Hitler, including the mustache, and then with a lot of comments around that photograph. And this was on, I believe it was on the front cover, but it was certainly part of a publication. And so I just want to set that up for a visual for those of you who are only listening today, and as Wesley Hunt interacts with Christopher Wray. So Anthony, go ahead and play that. You can play it all the way up to 4:56 unless I tell you to stop. But we're going to stop at 4:56.
Okay, and before we play it, I just have a question.
Yeah.
Director Wray, what he said was, I didn't see any problem with what he said, but my problem is that where has he been in the past few years? Like, we haven't even heard from him really at all, unless he's being in a position like this where he's getting questioned and stuff like that. He's not being a real leader. Why are we having these people in these positions that are not real leaders? Like, he should have been on the forefront of this and saying, hey, we need to simmer down with this talk because we're getting a lot highly unusual activity of credible threats on both sides of the aisle, and we need to stop this. And just be very vocal about simmer down. And, can we go back to the old-fashioned days where if someone asked, hey, what are your thoughts on Donald Trump? I mean, it could be, you replace that name with anybody and they go, no comment, just let it go. And literally just show that you don't like that person by not either talking about them, or you say why. Like, I don't like this, and this, what they're doing. Okay, leave it at that. You don't have to say he's a threat to democracy or comparing him to Hitler and stuff and allowing this stuff to happen. The leaders in these spaces are not real leaders, in my opinion. I just wanted to throw that out there. So.
Well, Anthony, your last comment sums it all up. And I've been talking about this for a long time. And of course, today's show is about this, that people are not serious in their jobs. They're not showing real leadership. Now, look, Christopher Wray, whether or not he would like to do what you're saying, you're suggesting, in other words, if he sees this very dangerous trend of highly, volatile rhetoric, I think it would be a great idea for him to say, if nothing else, look, I don't expect him to say, hey, can't we all get along here? But I would expect him to say maybe that if you engage in this type of behavior, if you cross the line of your First Amendment rights, you could be subject to a criminal investigation, certainly an inquiry, certainly being looked at. If you do. Now, the only time we heard anything like this, Anthony, ironically, that I remember in the last 3.5 years, came from his boss, the Attorney General, with that memorandum about parents at school board meetings. That's the only time that I've heard anything like this. And he did comment. Ray commented about this around then, because he was asked to testify in front of Congress. And he talked about, well, I forget what the word is that he used. Well, these are it's an administrative thing where we're going to look to make sure that, there is no terrorist threat. There is no specific threat against an individual board member or so forth or so on. I didn't buy that then, because none of those things would be the responsibility of the FBI. They would be the responsibility of local law enforcement. Take it from me. I know I know exactly when I needed to call the FBI for either assistance on an investigation or say, hey, listen, we came across something that's really federal purview. It's yours. How do you want to proceed? Someone making a threat against another individual at a local level is not the FBI's responsibility. So I say all that to say that if Christopher Wray really thought there was a problem, on both sides of the aisle with dangerous rhetoric, I'm not sure that his boss or the administration would allow him to go public and say, hey, we got to cut this crap out. We have to cut it out. If you're making threats against federal officials, it's my job to make sure that you don't carry those threats out. And I'm going to do everything I can within the law to make sure that you don't. I'm not sure that his bosses would allow him to say that, because the vast majority of the threats are not coming from the side that they would like for it to come from, their own, in my opinion. So that's my thought on that, Anthony. That's my thought on that. So with that, we set it up right now about Christopher Wray. Yep. Oh, yeah. This passionate stuff can turn to violence, and I'm going to call it out, so forth and so on. Let's listen to this clip with Representative Wesley Hunt. And again, for those of you who are not watching, there is a visual behind the representative with a photograph that's made to look like Donald Trump as Adolf Hitler. Anthony, go ahead and hit it. Cut 3.
He does seem to become very focused on this particular rally and former President Trump. But exactly what his thought process was in doing that, that's something that's still very much under investigation.
I want to make something clear to the American people to try to help out what motive could be. And again, it's not my job to steer it, but here are some of my thoughts. I'm not sure about motive either, specifically, but I can tell you that after this assassination of 10 people on both sides, I said that both parties need to tone down the rhetoric. But recently, just on Monday, in fact, President Biden called into the Harris campaign event and said that President Trump was a threat to democracy. Just take a look behind me at these photos. This is a magazine cover of the New Republic from June 2024, published just 1 month before the assassination attempt on President Trump. In a tweet explaining the cover, the New Republic said this: "Today, we at the New Republic think we can spend this election year in one of two ways. We could spend it debating whether Trump meets the 9 or 17 points that define fascism, or we could spend it saying he's damn close enough and we'd better fight. We unreservedly choose the latter course." Now, sir, I know you said that the FBI doesn't have a clear motive yet, and you've explained that. But in your professional experience as an investigator, do you think that language like this could radicalize someone to engage in political violence?
I certainly understand the point of the question. What I would tell you is that, respectfully, I don't think it's appropriate for me as FBI director to be characterizing or engaging in public commentary on specific people's rhetoric. Okay. And that's because it's not that I don't understand why you're raising the question, but I'm saying that in my role.
Ladies and gentlemen, I play these clips back to back. You heard it, saw it yourself. Just this previous clip, when he's being asked by Jerry Nadler about political rhetoric, so forth and so on, he started off fine about specific threats, but he certainly, this is Christopher Wray, he meandered off into the generalities about the heightened rhetoric and the passions, and they can basically result in violence. Here, he simply asked about, in other words, he's looking at this cover from the New Republic magazine. It should be called the New Soviet Union, by the way, if you know the New Republic. But he's asked about this. It's showing Donald Trump as Adolf Hitler. They're talking about all these different points about, when a person becomes a dictator, check on the boxes, and basically Trump is almost there. And Wray can't say, you know what, that's one of those things I'm talking about right there. I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, Independent. That's one of the things that could certainly, that's passionate, that's over the top, that could lead somebody to commit acts of violence. He couldn't say it. He could not say it. This is despicable to me. He got called out with a specific example. Now, I can tell you right now, if he had been asked about some 20-year-old kid walking into the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, he was said, this is, or even being in part of the rally or saying we should go down to the Capitol. I guarantee you he would have called that out, no problem. But here he has a picture of Donald Trump as Adolf Hitler with all of these different quotes around him about why he's a fascist dictator. And the director of the FBI couldn't simply say, you know what? That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about that's dangerous when people do that. It would be as simple as that. That would not be controversial. I mean, wrong, would that be controversial, Anthony?
No, not at all. I mean, I don't get how that is even allowed, and I don't know why. I mean, I'm not by far a lawyer or anything like that, but that seems like that's grounds to sue somebody, to go, hey, you're photoshopping me as Hitler and portraying that. I mean, how do we let that even happen? I mean, this, and then also he has the opportunity, like you said, to point out, like, this is a really stark example, and he chooses not to. That just shows he's a shill. He's just a shill. He's not he's not in his job seriously. He's put there by somebody, or he's just taking orders from somebody, and that's it. And that's why we haven't heard from him for the past few months or years, however long he's been director. And at least even just saying, like, hey, let's tone it down and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it would have been totally fine. Listen, I'm not going to interject my personal political views here, but that's not something that I would consider reasonable to do. But he couldn't do it. He could not do it.
Yeah, that would have been perfectly worded if he didn't want to tiptoe around that line, which, some people don't want to do, which I respect in these, senior positions. But for him to comment on the Paul Pelosi thing, with Nadler, just okay, and gives a, pretty good answer, he can't do that, which is like literally portraying him as Hitler, Donald Trump as Hitler, and says what he says right there. It's just an absolute shame.
Yeah, and of course, Congressman Hunt also set it up with saying, "Hey, I forget what it was, a couple of days ago or whatever it is, President Biden again said that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy." And by the way, I just saw an ad just this morning popped up on YouTube, of course, unavoidably, with Kamala Harris saying that Donald Trump is an existential threat to democracy. When you're telling people, it's like, listen, your gas stove is an existential threat to the climate. Donald Trump is an existential threat to democracy. You're telling them that if we do not eliminate these threats, we as a democracy or our climate are going to be destroyed. That's what existential threat means. I mean, it's going to wipe us out.
Yeah.
But they say it over and over and over. They say it over at the same time. Out of the other side of their mouth, they're saying that all of this horrible rhetoric, these threats, these politically charged statements are all coming from the right. But she's running a campaign ad calling Trump an existential threat.
No, yeah.
So,
and you see on the right, what do right-wing conservative, what do they say about Kamala Harris or Joe Biden? They don't say that they're a threat to democracy or anything like that.
They say they're they're wrong, they're out of control, they are a disaster. They give reasons.
They go, they let this and this and this happen, even though they said they were going to do this, this, and that. So they give clear reasons, which I think, whether you're on the left or the right, you have to give reasons why. And you see Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, they just spew out this garbage without giving any examples. Or if the examples they give, they're already debunked. Little, it could be a snippet of what he said, 4 years ago, 6 years ago, right? And it's literally a snippet, like what he said about the Charlottesville thing, for instance.
Yes.
And then he goes and says that there's people coming out of the forest with pitchforks. It's like, dude, no, nobody's doing. What are you watching Shrek? dude, that's not happening, you know? And he spews it out and he gets away with it. And, you know, of course, the media, here's the problem, is that the media is a machine that people watch, you know, whether me and you and a lot of people who listen to this podcast know that it's just garbage, you know, it's just garbage that they're feeding us, which is fine. But a lot of people don't think that. They don't want to think that. They watch that stuff. And then, but the point is that they don't point out these things, that the lies that they're saying. They're just amplifying oh, he's a threat to democracy. Vote Kamala Harris. You know, he's going to take away these rights. He's going to do this and that. And I feel bad for these people because, and I don't feel any hatred, or I'm not mad at them either. It's more so they're being brainwashed. They don't even know it. They just don't even know it. And then they just go along with the program and they start, you know, they become literal NPCs, non-playable characters. They just are going about their life getting fed this information and thinking it's correct.
Yeah.
And so you can't really blame them that much. I mean, of course, everybody makes their own choices and decisions, but at this point, the media and stuff it's guiding them to those decisions, and they're not using their critical thinking skills that mostly everybody has. So.
Well, Anthony, you're absolutely right about this, and speaking about the media, and again, none of this kind of stuff is possible without the mainstream media. You have to remember, let's just say a month ago, we were told by the media, and you name the platform, we know who they are, that Joe Biden was perfectly mentally healthy. There's no problem whatsoever, and all the negative things that we're hearing are all coming from right-wing conspiracy theorists and from right-wing media outlets that are editing tapes or editing audio, that nothing you're seeing is true. They're making this up. Donald Trump or Joe Biden is more mentally fit than Donald Trump until what? Until the debate. And really until the money start drying up almost the next day for Joe Biden. And that's what put them against this wall of reality that led them to the point where they were. They say, hey, you know what, the president, maybe he's not capable, because the money dried up and all of the support dried up from the typical high-end Democrat donors. They said not another penny, because all they want, I get it, politically speaking, all they want to do is to defeat Donald Trump. And once they saw that, the public now saw that, geez, maybe Biden is suffering some type of mental illness, disorder, whatever it is. Well, hell, we can't beat Trump now. If the media really sees this, if the public really sees this, we can't hide anymore. Now they had to get on board to be part of the process of getting rid of Joe Biden, getting anybody else in there, even Kamala Harris, because he was a dead end politically for them. It's the only reason. But it's the same media who told you and me and other people who have two eyes or 2 ears or both that Biden is not fit. They were telling us that we were liars or that we were crazy. And they finally had to admit it. But they only admit things when there's no other option for them, for their ends. So
Sometimes, because look at Christopher Wray right here.
Yes, by the way, I didn't say always. I said they only admit it. They only admit it when there's no other option. I didn't say they always admit it.
Yep.
Yeah. But you're right. This is I hope this is a stark contrast for people who are listening and watching the podcast. I think it could be clearer. So the final thing the final clip I want to play is from Representative Jamie Raskin, or Jamie Rascal. That might be a good name for him. But it's another example of, and by the way, there were a ton of these clips where these politicians were using this time as a platform for whatever for whatever specific issue they were after, or hatred of Donald Trump, whatever pet issue they had. they wanted to promote or harp on, they used it for, instead of trying to get to the bottom of what happened at that rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. So this final one is, again, this is Jamie Raskin. And this is not with Christopher Wray. This is before Christopher Wray. This is going back to the now former director of the Secret Service, Kimberly Cheatle. And I want you to listen to this just this opening or address from Mr. Raskin. Go ahead and hit it, Anthony.
But we can't let ourselves off the hook either, dear colleagues. What happened in Butler, Pennsylvania was a double failure. The failure by the Secret Service to properly protect former President Trump, and the failure of Congress to properly protect our people from criminal gun violence. We must therefore also ask hard questions about whether our laws are making it too easy for potential assassins to obtain firearms generally and the AR-15 specifically. Mr. Comparatore, former President Trump, and the other rally attendees wounded in Butler are now members of a club no one wants to belong to, the thousands of people who have fallen victim to mass shootings. Last year, we had 655 mass shootings in America, defined as 4 or more people being shot or killed in a single event, not including the shooter. 712 people died and nearly 2,700 people were wounded in these attacks in 2023. Mass shootings are commonplace. They happen at political rallies and constituent meetings, in our elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools, in churches, synagogues, and mosques, and movie theaters and parades and nightclubs and grocery stores, in concerts and on street corners. Here are the worst mass shootings in the last 11 or 12 years. The list is
Stop right there. Now, again, there's so much to unravel, and we're gonna finish up on this. But there's so much that we could unravel. I'm not going to get into all this, but I'm going to go back in time real quick. 1963, Dallas, Texas. John F. Kennedy is assassinated by Lee Harvey Oswald. At least that's what I believe. The gun laws back then were far less restrictive than they are now. Local jurisdictions and on the federal level. Lee Harvey Oswald obtained that rifle through a mail order, if I remember correctly. I think it was $20-something for this rifle, and he kills the most powerful person in the world. So we fast forward up here to 2020, let's say. Jamie Raskin takes his time to focus on his hatred of guns. And gun ownership. That's what he does. Not the obvious take that, gee, we have 300 million guns in the country. Whatever laws we have, they're not going to make the guns go away. The guns already exist. So if someone already wants to commit the heinous crime of assassinating a former president and current presidential candidate, gun laws are probably not going to dissuade that shooter, that criminal. I know this sounds elementary to this audience, but it's not elementary to so many people. And by the way, Jamie Raskin's one of them. That the reason that criminals are criminals is because they violate criminal laws. Simple as that.
Really?
Yeah, isn't it? Well, Anthony, that sarcastic, really, you provide it right there, is really it's illuminating, because I don't think people actually do get that. A lot of people don't. A lot of people don't get that.
Some people think we should just have more signs up saying no guns allowed.
Well, there you go. No gun zone. No drugs. But people, they are naive, Anthony. They are naive, and they think that those things work, and they only work to the advantage of criminals and would-be criminals. That's all it does. Oh, listen, no gun zone. Well, guess what? Who's going to abide by that? The criminals thinking. The people who abide by laws. So I'm assuming that there are no guns there. So that's going to be the softest target that I can come up with. Again, we can talk about this all day long, but I want to focus on is Raskin's inability to acknowledge reality. I don't know how else to say it. So he actually threw some points in there that are accurate, they're true. Talked about the number of mass shootings. He actually talked about what a mass shooting is defined as. And there's no consistent definition of mass shootings, but basically we'll say, and he said it too, 4 or more people killed at one incident or shot at one incident. Now, he said there were 655 mass shootings. Oh, by the way, he said in 2023, 655 mass shootings in 2023. So that means 4 more people, 655 times were shot in one incident in 2023. What's that come out to? Comes out to about 2,500 people who were shot. At least that. It could be more than 4, so I'm not really sure what that number is. But let's just say 3,000 people. In 2021, I'm reading from the Pew Research Center. It says, what does the data say about gun deaths in the U.S.? So the most recent data I could find, comprehensive, goes back to 2021. How many people die from gun-related injuries in the U.S. each year? Again, this is Pew. In 2021, the most recent year for which complete data is available, 48,830 people died from gun-related injuries in the U.S., according to the CDC. So we're talking about a few thousand were the result of mass shootings. It's really important to remember, a few thousand out of that almost 50,000, 48,800. So even mass shootings with the definition of 4 or more are very rare, even given the number of mass shootings almost every weekend in Chicago or LA or San Francisco or Atlanta, or you pick it. But, you total these different cities up every weekend. We have multiple mass shootings, almost always with what? A handgun or handguns. Because it doesn't have to be just one gun. It could be 2 shooters that, obviously, or multiple shooters. But when you look at this a few thousand people, and every life is precious, every loss of a life is a tragedy. But we have to also deal in the reality about where is the real problem? What is the real threat to general society? And we're looking at 48,900 people in 2021 died as a result of gun injuries. The vast majority are individual, one-on-one shootings, the vast, vast majority. Another very important part here, about 50%, I got it right here, 54% of those gun deaths in 2021, 54% of those nearly 49,000 deaths were self-inflicted, were suicide. 54% were self-inflicted. So you think about this, what's that, 48,000, which is half of that, we're looking at 25,000 or so, more than that actually, it's quite a bit more than that. Over 25,000 of the 49,000 were suicide. It's the gun control lobby, the gun control mentality does not take into account any of these obvious numbers, that most of the crime, most of these deaths are in inner cities. And again, I don't care where a death occurs, it's all tragic and should all be prevented at all legal and constitutional cost. But the idea that these hotbeds of criminal activity, these groups of deadly criminals are going to affect the vast majority of Americans. In other words, these things are fairly or significantly isolated. And the reasons why these things are taking place, these types of crimes, these types of mass shootings, I say mass shootings, 4 or 5 are people getting shot at a party or anywhere, or in a street corner, as Raskin said, on a street corner. Why these things are happening? Why are they happening? The reason that the assassination attempt of Donald Trump obviously is so significant is because, thank God, they're incredibly rare. The last time it happened was 43 years ago with Ronald Reagan. They're extremely, extremely rare, very rare. One is unacceptable, but it's not the daily occurrence that we see across the country in so many of our cities. It's not the case. Now, talked about suicides, but here's the other thing about what Raskin said. I'm going to go right to the end of this article, just about the end of it, about these mass shootings. And he talked about AR-15s. He said assault rifles or rifles generally, and specifically the AR-15. Okay. So how many people are killed in mass shootings every year? This is a difficult question to answer because there's no single agreed upon definition of the term mass shooting, as I said earlier. I just wanted to put that in there. Again, this is coming from not me. It's coming from Pew Research. The FBI collects data on active shooter incidents, which it defines as one or more individuals actively engaged in killing or attempting to kill people in a populated area. Using the FBI's definition, 103 people, excluding the shooters, died in such incidents in 2021. So going to 2021, 100 of these people died under the FBI's definition. I'm using the, 4 people, they have a different one. Whichever definition you take or use, it's a minuscule number of people related to the total number of people killed due to firearms. This is extremely, extremely rare that people die in mass shootings. Now, again, when we hear the phrase mass shooting, look, and I am the father of a young child. I'm the father of a child in elementary school. I would be lying to you outright if I told you that every day when I drop my kid off, I don't have that vision of one of these monsters infiltrating his school and inflicting the type of terror and mass murder that we've seen a number of times, and way too many times. One time, of course, is too many, over, let's say, the last 20 plus years in this country. But the cop in me and the logical side of me knows you have a far, far more likely chance of being hit by lightning twice in your life than you do of dying as an elementary kid's school, as in a mass shooting. Now, if it happens to you, it happens to your child, that's 100%. It's all that matters. If it happened to me, it'd be 100%. I understand that. I don't mean to downplay the devastation that so many families have experienced. But devastation can come in any form of ways that are very beyond rare, be exceedingly rare. So I can't operate like this in my daily life. I don't want my kid to operate like this in his daily life, that, it's, tomorrow could be the day. It's not likely. Now, if I lived in the South Side of Chicago, it'd be a different story. I'd be telling my kid all kinds of things about self-preservation, where to stay away from, what not to do, who not to be involved with, because that is a much more likely place to die as a result of gun injury than it is in your school. By the way, especially the school district where I live, where they're armed to the teeth at every single school, on duty deputy sheriffs. So brings me a little peace of mind there. Fast forwarding here. There's so much. The last thing, what types of firearms are most commonly used in gun murders in the U.S.? In 2020, the most recent year for which FBI has published data, handguns were involved in 59% of the 13,620 U.S. gun murders and non-negligent manslaughter for which data is available. Rifles, the category that includes guns sometimes referred to as assault weapons, were involved in. Anthony, do you want to take a guess, because you haven't seen this article? Now, by the way, I'm going to set it up again. 59% were handguns. Rifles, all rifles, not just AR-15s or AK-47s or MAC-10s or all the hated guns out there. All rifles, hunting rifles, carbines, every kind of rifle accounted for what percentage of homicides, actually deaths, total deaths in this country, firearm deaths? What percentage?
I'd have to say, I'm taking a random guess, 5%.
Ooh, close, but you're about twice over the percentage. 3%.
Wow.
3%. Actually, it's murders. 3% of firearm murders, all of them, all types of rifles. So if you took out the rifles that all the so-called gun experts out there in Congress and the Senate, things like this, if you took out all the rifles that they don't even know how to pronounce or know what they are, if you took out all these different and just left the AR-15, because that is the poster child for rifle hatred, the AR-15. I don't know how small a percentage would be. I have no idea. I won't even guess, but we do know it'd be smaller than 3% because this one takes in consideration all types of rifle, make up 3% of firearm murders. Why do I spend time reading these excerpts from the Pew Research? Because Jamie Raskin took time to highlight his hatred for and belief that the AR-15, if we can just ban this rifle, if we can just make it go away, that all the murders in all those cities that we talked about, that these 48,000 deaths every year from firearms, it's all going to magically go away. That's what this gentleman implied when he said this to Cheatle. If I can read this piece, if I can do research, how lazy and uninformed are our so-called leaders in Congress if they can't do the same thing? And if they can do it and they still spew the same, I will just say, misleading information, if they still spew that, they are beyond worthless as so-called leaders in our government, because they are doing an absolute disservice to people across the entire country. Anthony, I'm going to give you the final word.
Yeah, I wish, before I used to think it was incompetence, or maybe just them operating on the emotional level. But just even without the stats that you said, just the statement that he's implying that if you just take away this one gun, we'll be, in a much better place. Even with someone who can slap two brain cells together, just read between the lines of what he said and make that assumption. I mean, it's now, I'm more on the cynical side of it. They have an agenda. They'll push it no matter what. They have no shame. Even after a president was almost killed, shot in the head, they're still spewing this stuff. That just shows to me that they're just, lack of better words, they're shills. And we need to get these people out because they're not in the best interest of us American people. I mean, can you take anything that these people say when they lie right off the bat? I mean, you gotta go, okay, that was a lie. What else are they lying about? You don't just go, ignore it and then accept the rest of what they say. Like, people need to start questioning as soon as they hear a lie like that, a blatant lie. I mean, we have to wake up, but we have to wake people up in a way of like sharing, breaking down things that, like you said, the stats, like, does this make sense logically? And that's the only real way to get through to people if they decide to listen. And I think just by us doing this podcast, and, I'm going to be making content out of this podcast, right? And I feel like I'm doing my duty to create content for people to share, because I want to, make it as entertaining as possible, what you said, and show charts and stuff like that. So people can share it to people who might want to watch and listen, go, wait, that does make sense. If we can just wake up one person at a time by doing that, we're doing our part. And by people sharing our clips and videos, they're doing their part too. Because not a lot of people, such as me, can articulate it in a way that you can, and then we have other people, of course, that are doing the job too. And so I'm just letting people know that, you know, incompetence, in my opinion, is out the window, and we are in a political civil war right now. And it's just more apparent than ever that you have these people that chose the side, and they're sticking to that side no matter what, even if it's they're bringing shame upon themselves personally. And we have to do our job to share this information that's not biased. It's just looking at the facts and putting 2 and 2 together. It's not that hard, and that is our part, and that's what we got to do. So I'll leave it at that.
Amen to that, Anthony. And this is a true partnership. I do what I do, however well or not well enough, but I do what I do, and you do an amazing a job with your part, with the technical side and with the production of this show. And I cannot thank you enough. You are a fantastic partner, and we are trying to be just providing just the facts, man, as I said in Dragnet. And we want to keep that up. And all of you listening and watching, I'm telling you right now, you have no idea. You have no idea what power you have to increase the footprint of this show, to increase the reach. You have the power right at your fingertip to search for us on YouTube, to share, to like, to comment, to increase the activity with this platform. If you do that, we continue to grow. If you don't, I know you enjoy listening and we enjoy having you, but if you believe what we're talking about is important, then you can do your role. Just like Anthony's doing his, I'm doing mine. We have to get the word out. Search on YouTube, comment on YouTube. And this will help break the dam that we're experiencing with YouTube right now. We're going to win this battle. We're not going to fight. We are fighting for law enforcement officers, and the rule of law. With that said, God bless each and every one of you. God bless America, and we will see you next time on Your Leo Nation.